And the deadly Joburg building fire has made property owner rights a discussion point once again. Let's find out what the legalities around evictions are from property attorney. Cilna Steyn joins me right now for this conversation. Cilna, a very warm good morning to you and thank you so much for your time. It's without a doubt a spotlight's been placed on, when it comes to the rules and regulations, the legalities surrounding evictions when it comes to property owners and landlords. As it stands, what does the law say?
Oh, thank you so much for having us. And firstly, I do want to say on behalf of myself and the entire team at SSLR, our deepest condolences. It's such a tragic event. And I think a highlight on property rights is important in a situation like this. And as an eviction specialist firm, this is the kind of thing that we are seeing so often, that we see unless we intervene and bring an eviction application successfully and effectively, these kind of things do happen. We've had so many cases in the past, for instance, the Joburg Park evictions, where the basis for the eviction was actually that the building is too dangerous for people to occupy. Now, the problem in this particular situation is obviously because the building belongs to the city of Johannesburg. Now, any owner of a property can bring an eviction application. They do have the right to do so. But the local municipality, even if it wasn't their building, but there is a risk of life or whatever the situation would be, they also have locus standi to bring eviction applications. Now, in this particular case, there was no pending evictions as far as I could have established. The issue with this situation is obviously there was a lease agreement in place, and I don't have specific details around this, but it seems like the lease agreement came to an end, and obviously in terms of our law, a lease agreement will then continue on a month-to-month basis. So whoever the last tenant was in terms of the lease agreement, the last lessee, that would be the party that has the right of occupation. And whoever now resides through and under that particular party would obviously, that is the party that would be responsible to regulate the right of occupation. So right of ownership does belong to the city of Johannesburg, and they have the right to give and deal with the right of occupation. But there will always be an obligation on an owner to ensure that a building is safe. And since the lease agreement came to an end, the ideal position would have been to then assess the lease agreement and not just let it carry on a month-to-month basis, basically until something like this happens. And now we are forced to deal with this situation. This is extremely tragic.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of fingers are being pointed at, at some point the NGO that leased, at some point it's the city of Johannesburg that's blamed, also those who have hijacked the building and are now or have been, receiving rent from these residents. But where do you think the city of Joburg missed the mark here in terms of maintenance and inspection of the building to assure that the events that led to yesterday did not happen?
I must say, if we look at the finger-pointing element in all of this, there are so many parties who are at blame for all of this. I mean, everything from the owner of the building, even though it is the municipality, to the municipality itself, to obviously the parties responsible for the municipality, as well as the tenant. But what I would have suggested, if we can go back in the past and really consider what should have been done, is no lease agreement should ever be left to run past its termination date without proper inspections. Hijacked buildings in inner cities across the country, this is not just a Johannesburg thing, across our country, hijacked buildings is a massive problem. And what happens is, regardless of who the owner or the tenant of the property is, these syndicates hijack the buildings, and the problem comes in when it comes to bringing an eviction application, be it on behalf of the municipality or the owner. there are so many parties at play in this that it becomes so dangerous to do an eviction that a lot of people shy away from it. But even if you don't, when you go to court, there will always be somebody or other party intervening at the very last moment simply to delay your eviction application. And since we have the Prevention of Illegal Evictions Act, which is a crucial piece of legislation on the back of Section 26 of the Constitution, allowing somebody the right to be in occupation of a property until a court orders an eviction after relevant circumstances has been taken into consideration. The problem with this is, in our courts, this is delayed because there are so many parties and so much focus on the right to housing that the right to safe housing basically goes very far out of the picture. That is where the problem lies. Housing and the municipality's obligation to provide alternative accommodation in a situation where people will be left homeless and destitute as a result of an eviction. Housing and alternative housing is simply not sufficient. We need safe, dignified housing for the people of our country. That's what we need.
And I'm glad you made that point, Cilna, because in as much as we talk about all the other role players around the property, it's also the property that suffers, right? It's the dignity of the property that suffers when there isn't cooperation in its maintenance and constant inspection. But thank you so much for speaking to me about the Cilna Steyn, a property attorney, speaking to me about some of the laws that are governing our country when it comes to evictions in the country, but also what's expected from business or the property owners and building owners in as far as the maintenance of these properties are concerned.